Welcome to the Women's Football Show here on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Kerry Pollock, Alison McConnell is with me and Suzanne Lappin joins us on the couch as well this week. Let's get right into it and have a look at the results from the weekend. It was Partick Thistle 0, Rangers 0, Hearts 4, Aberdeen 0, Dundee United 0, Spartans 6, Hamilton 2, Motherwell 1, Montrose 1, Glasgow City 5, Hibernian 1 and Celtic 3. Suzanne, one big fixture there that we're going to have a look at. It's going to be Partick Thistle 0, Rangers 0. A great result for Thistle, but a bit of a slip up for Rangers.
Yeah, I think starting positively, I think for Thistle. Brian Graham has talked a lot about taking points off of one of the big teams, so I think he'll be delighted that he's eventually done that. I think, they set out perfectly to play against Rangers with the low block. They made it difficult for Rangers, and actually, seeing some of the highlights of the game, I didn't think Rangers were able to create too many clear-cut chances, and that's credit to Thistle. Jo Potter has been flawless since she came in, so it is their first, real test about how they reset and go again, because obviously there's a massive game in a week's time against Celtic.
Indeed. Not that Partick Thistle would have needed any motivation, but what can that do for them going ahead this season?
I think it's massive. I think, looking at it from the outside, I think everybody thought it would have been a close game, but I think everybody would have favoured Rangers to get the 3 points. But I think, Brian Graham talks a lot about the belief in the team, and I really, really do like watching Partick Thistle. I think they're a great side. I think they work really well as a unit. You can tell they've got that spirit from the touchline to the team. They've improved from last season. I think personally there's no reason why they can't go and grab that 4th spot. You look at their opponents yesterday, Rangers, it's who they've got in the cup final.
Indeed, yeah.
So the fact that they've went toe-to-toe and came away with a point, potentially could have had 3 if the goal stood. So it's massive for them, and it will just give them that confidence, not only for the rest of the season, but going on to that cup final as well.
Not a disaster for Rangers, Ali. Of course, they got a point out of it, but for Celtic and Glasgow City, they're looking at it going, oh, right, okay, there is a way to get something from them here.
Yeah, too, and I just think it offers a bit of encouragement in terms of the title. It cuts the gap now to 4 points between Rangers and Celtic, 6 between City and Rangers. And I actually think the goal that Thistle scored that was disallowed, I've watched it back 3 or 4 times. I'm struggling to see why it wasn't given. And I think, that really would have raised a few eyebrows, I think, if Thistle had to have come away from the win. But I could see why Brian Graham was so aggrieved about that. I couldn't see why it wasn't given. I still can't see why it wasn't given. And I think that too, will just offer a bit of encouragement. Rangers get past Hearts midweek, just scraped past. It was a 1-0. I think Jo Potter had said they weren't at their best, come away, you take the points and you just go on. But I think for a team who have been scoring so many goals of late, between Jane Ross and Rio Hardy and Rachel Rowe, players who are very creative, very clinical, I think it will just give some encouragement to the chasing pack, to Celtic and to Glasgow City. And I think we could end up with it maybe being just quite as tight. I'd still say, for me, Rangers are still the favourites, but there's a real focus now on Sunday and what happens at Ibrox.
How much encouragement will that give Celtic, especially ahead of that Old Firm game coming up, Susan?
Yeah, I think it's massive for Celtic, as you say. It cuts the points, it makes it more interesting. Sunday's game, it'll either go, Rangers 7 ahead or Celtic 1 point behind. So, Celtic have got a real opportunity here. And I think, rewind maybe 2-3 weeks ago, to be honest, I found it difficult to see who was going to stop Rangers, take points off them, because, as you're saying, they've been such free-flowing, scoring goals for fun. They had Jane Ross coming back. I think Rachel Rose, the outstanding player in the league. So everything was so positive the last couple of weeks. Against Hearts, obviously, they struggled. And then against Thistle to drop points. So, yeah, Sunday will be really, really interesting.
We're just saying, obviously, between the top 3, there's 6 points in it. Did you think that Rangers were going to excel right ahead?
Yeah, I think, for me, in the early part of the season, I think, player for player, I think Rangers have been exceptional since the start of the season. I think Jo Potter has got them working really well. I really like her style as a manager as well, and she's pretty open and honest. But they have showed that, they can struggle against teams, and for the likes of Celtic and Glasgow City as well, who, aren't by all means out of it either, it gives them something to really go after.
What have you made of Celtic under the new boss?
It's been a difficult start for her. I mean, to come into the 2 games that she came into, the first game, the semi-final against Rangers was massive. I think with any new manager coming in, it's a difficult one between, you know, making any major changes and sort of letting the team go as they are. I think she's obviously got her own style and her own imprint she wants to put in the team, but that is going to take time. You know, Celtic of late were the cup team, they were the cup specialists, and to lose that I think was quite a big setback for them, and then to go on and lose against Glasgow City. So I think, you know, I do think the pressure is kind of on Celtic going into Sunday, because it is, you know, a game against their biggest rivals, and they for me need to take something out of that game, if not win it. And get the 3 points.
Yeah. Do you see Celtic turning a corner, Ali? Is there not been at their best the past couple of weeks?
Yeah, I thought that was actually quite a big win for Celtic on Sunday. I thought the game against Hibs would be quite a test. I thought it would be maybe up there with quite similar to the Rangers and Glasgow City games. I think they've looked like a shadow of themselves since Fran Alonso has left. However, I think there's been a kind of change of shape after the first couple of games against Rangers, and City got reverted back to the style and the shape that they had under Fran. I think the team looks a bit more settled since then, and I thought that was quite a significant result yesterday afternoon, because it's not an easy place to go, and obviously Hibs going into the game on the back of beating Glasgow City, albeit in penalties last weekend, and then having had a free week. You know, Celtic were in action on Wednesday night. Hibs had a free week, the chance to recover, prepare. So I thought it was a big test for them to come through it. I think you'll see on Sunday how much they've come on. I thought they were very, very poor against Rangers in Elena's first game. I think they just didn't turn up, and I know the scoreline might have reflected a fairly close encounter, Rangers winning it in the last minute. So I thought Rangers were head and shoulders above them that game, and again against City. I thought just Celtic just weren't there. I thought they were an imitation of the side that we've seen, no real threat about them. Natasha Flint's come back. She got 2 goals yesterday, up and running again. She said after the game it's taken her a bit of time to settle, which surprised her, because she settled very quickly when she came in last January. She said though she feels as though she's found her feet, and the fact that she started to score goals, that it kind of opens the floodgates. I think Celtic need that. I think obviously Amy Gallagher has been scoring goals, but she needs a bit of help, and I think Natasha Flint can be a real handful when she's on her game. She gives Celtic a physicality that they don't have, and I think she could be key, and having her involved in the game could be key on Sunday. But I agree with Suzanne, Celtic come out of that game on the back of a defeat. I think you'd have to say you'd expect the league to be all but gone. No one will say it, of course, but I think realistically it'll be gone. They need something, even if it's just a point. I think they'll be looking to take 3, but they can't afford to let Rangers open that gap up again.
How difficult is it, Suzanne, when you've been so successful under a manager and then they move on and someone else comes in and tries to change the idea? Is it hard to get used to that?
Yeah, I think with any new manager coming in for the players, you know, when I actually was at the Celtic Rangers game in our first game, commentating, and you know, it can go one or two ways. You know, the players maybe feel under pressure to impress, or you know, they feel that they can go out, the ones that maybe haven't had a chance, and go and show what they can do. But I think for me, under Fran, Celtic were together right from the players to the managers to the fans, that they were really, really strong, a really strong unit. You could see how much the players loved playing for Fran. So, you know, it will take time for Elena. She's obviously, you know, a very experienced, quality coach that they've brought in. And, you know, as I say, with any transition, it takes time for, you know, that style of play, ways of working to adapt. So I'm sure she will get that right and be successful. The problem is the point in the season where she's came in, you know, there's not much time afforded to get it right, because Sunday's a huge game that they need to take points from.
Just going back onto Rangers then, they've been so successful, they were running away with it, as most of us were saying. But do teams need that sometimes, to have a little bit of a blip almost, to regroup and go again almost? Yeah,
I think it's how you react, isn't it, as a squad. I think when you are so successful, you know, when I played under Glasgow City, it was, you know, you were expected to win week in, week out. That's just the way it is, and it will be like that at a club for Rangers. So, you know, the players, although it was a draw, it would have felt like a defeat yesterday, because they don't like losing. That's not what they're set out to do. I think Joe Potter spoke about that you know, the group are hurting from that, but she needs to see a reaction. They'll go away, they'll work at it, because the style that Partick Thistle adopted yesterday, that low block, 9 times out of 10, that is what Rangers are going to come up against. And as players in the collective, you need to know how to break that down. It's, you know, I think the speed of play yesterday wasn't quick enough, and I think, you know, it can work, you know, in their favour in terms of maybe going forward and having the time this week. They've got the full week, no midweek fixture, to go and put that right for Sunday.
Well, let's just have a look at the league table then. At the other end of the table, we had Lanarkshire Derby going on. Ali, we had the Robert Watson in last week. 2-1 victory for Hamilton. They seem to be motoring a little bit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Just as Dundee United are going into free fall too. I think now it's incredibly tight at the bottom. It's got very interesting. For a long period, you thought, you know, that Hamilton were aloof. They were adrift from the pack. I thought that they looked certain to be going down, but all of a sudden now you're looking and there's 3 points between 4 teams.
Yeah.
I think Dundee United, without a manager, I think they've lost their last 6 games. That's a team that I think you would fear for. I thought that was a huge win for Motherwell. For Hamilton Accies yesterday. Absolutely huge for them, and it can't. You know, they've had a couple of decent results. I know they were hammered midweek by Glasgow City, but they'll know that it's the teams round about them that they need to beat if they're going to stay in the league.
What does that say about them, Suzanne, that they've been able to come out of that defeat and come into a derby game and get the victory?
Yeah, again, I think, you know, over the years, Motherwell's probably had the edge in that fixture. And, you know, when it is a derby, naturally as a player you raise your game. And I think, you know, as you say, to come off the back of a heavy defeat and get those 3 points, it's massive for them. You know, they are at the foot of the table, but there isn't, you know, many points between them and the teams above. So, you know, it's still all to play for at the bottom end of the table.
In those derby games, did you feel a little bit of extra pressure on those games because you say you're expected to win week in, week out?
Yeah, I think when I was at Glasgow City, it was probably Hibs that were our biggest rivals and competitors, and yeah, there was always an edge to the fixture. There just is, because, you know, it's you two that are going for everything, and, you know, there is the build up to it, and that week is just slightly different as well when, you know, you're going up against your biggest rivals. And, you know, obviously Hamilton have came out on top. I think for Motherwell, you know, they have had a mixed bag this season, you know, compared to where they were last season. You know, I think they'll be really disappointed to have lost that fixture.
We talk about Celtic and Rangers both going for it, but Glasgow City just quietly going about their business. Will sneak up on both of them, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, it's massive disappointment last week going out the cup. I mean, you know, again, I'll sit here as an ex-City player, and it's not acceptable to go out the cup. That's just the standards that have been set at the club over the years, and, you know, it is the league that, you know, that they want to win, but winning cups is important as well. And, you know, they are going about their business. I think the return of Fiona Brown is massive.
Yeah,
I think she's a huge player. She was at the club when I was there, obviously a younger player then, and, you know, I think her coming back more experienced. She's obviously an exceptional player at the top end of the pitch, and I think City have been missing that, if I'm honest. So I think, you know, they're going along quietly. You know, they're certainly not out of it. I think getting that result against Celtic last week as well was massive for them. So, yeah, not out of the running.
No. I think City would settle for second, given the fact it opens the door to European football.
I honestly, personally, can never say it, because I would never have settled for second at Glasgow City, and I know the tables have maybe turned slightly. You know, Rangers and Celtic are a different, you know, force now in the women's game, and that's obviously, you know, you accept that, and financially they've got much more support, but knowing the manager as I do, knowing the experienced players they've got there, you know, settling for second just doesn't come into their nature. Of course, it would give the Champions League, which is massive, so, you know, second at minimum, but, you know, they will want to win the league, no doubt about that.
I think last season showed, though, that, you know, City at one point had an 8-point lead in the split. You know, we were in mid-April and they were sitting 8 points ahead, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're going into the last few games and there was nothing between the top three. I think it just illustrates the fact that when you get to the split, and I think the top 6 are all playing against one another and taking points off of one another, I think it can unravel. And then, of course, when you have a doubt, I think if you plant the seed of doubt in the minds of a team, it can get quite fraught when you've had a lead diminish. I think it's a very different mentality needed from being the chasing pack. I think the momentum all goes with the team that are chasing. I think it would be remiss to write City off. I just think, given the experience that they've got, I think you would struggle to ever completely write them off.
And Rangers are in a different position now, because they are the ones out in front, and it's how you deal with that as well, because as you say, it's a different sort of pressure, being the leaders for so long, to being chasing, you know, and almost trying to, you know, go about your business, taking care of your own results and knowing that that might be enough to get you there. But when you're out in front, you know, any slip up gives teams opportunities. So it'll be interesting to see how Joe Potter's side, you know, handle that as well.
I think that's why Sunday is such a huge game, because you'll see the reaction. I think last 2 games Rangers will feel as though they've not really done themselves justice. They'll feel as though like performances have been below the expectation, below the bar that they've set for themselves for much of this campaign, which is why I think Sunday becomes fairly intriguing. I think the fact the game's at Ibrox is a big thing. You know, you want as many supporters to be going along. I think, you know, tickets are very accessible, funded, you know, like they're priced very, very reasonably. Season ticket holders able to go along. I think they'll be looking for a crowd and obviously looking to use home advantage for that 1-2. But I think if they come out of that with 3 points, I think they become firm favourites to go on and take the title. But I think there is a real element of intrigue into how they respond just on the back of the last 2 performances.
It's the old cliche question, but is it the games against each other and against Glasgow City that are going to decide the places in the table?
For me, I think it is. I think you've seen that. I think the top 3 tend to be very consistent against one another. You have the odd aberration from that, as of yesterday, and Celtic dropping points to Hearts before Christmas, the weekend, of course, where news broke that Fran Alonso was wanted over stateside. I think you do have those kind of blips, but ultimately for me, it's the games against one another that will determine the outcome of the title. And I think the players know that. I think clubs know that. I think it's why there's such a focus and intensity on these games.
Can you pick a winner in the derby, Suzanne?
It's hard. Obviously, you know, as we spoke about derbies, they are slightly different. But I think, you know, as I say, that Celtic Rangers game in the cup a couple of weeks ago, you know, you said that the scoreline probably didn't reflect the performance. You know, for me, particularly in that first half, Rangers could have been out of sight, if we're honest, in that game. You know, I think Rangers do probably have the stronger squad. So I would probably think Rangers might just edge it.
Yeah, well, let's have a look at the other fixtures at the weekend along with that derby. We've got Partick Thistle against Hibernian, Aberdeen take on Dundee United, Hearts face Montrose, Rangers against Celtic, of course, Hamilton against Spartans, and Motherwell will take on Glasgow City. Any other fixtures there, Ali, that you think could potentially be slip-ups for teams, or where teams could get surprise points from?
Yeah, I think on paper it all looks very straightforward. Obviously we know that games aren't won and lost on paper. I think Hamilton will be keen to pick up any scraps that they can, just along the way that would give them some encouragement about staying in the league. But I think this weekend the focus is very much on the top half of the table. I think all eyes will be on Ibrox.
Can you pick a winner in that one?
I think if Rangers turn up, Rangers will win. I think if Rangers play the way that they can, then I can't see Celtic landing a glove on them. I do think they have been the best team in the league across the course of the campaign. I think they've got hugely influential players. I think Rachel Rowe, for me, has just pulled the strings for Rangers this season, creating chances, and you've got players there that are fairly clinical. If Celtic can regroup and come again, I think they can make it interesting. I think they have the capabilities. They essentially have the spine of the squad that they have that took it all the way last season. I know they lost a lot of players over the summer. But I think you've still got a good bit of experience in there, Caitlin Hayes and Kelly Clark, and I think Natasha Flint could be pivotal to how the latter months of the campaign shape out. I think she offers just something a bit different for Celtic, but if you're pushing me for a prediction, I would go for Rangers.
Rangers. Well, that brings us to the end of the Women's Show this week. We'll be back next week with another special guest to chat to and some more action to look forward to. We'll see you then.
I can't see.